Welcome to Thinking Toolbox Part 2. In this session, we'll look at just 4 concepts that are key to understanding how cognition, or thinking, works. They are external world, empiricism, perception, and contradiction. The external world is the term used to describe all which exists outside of our minds, the universe of things outside and independent of human consciousness. It embraces the objects of our physical environment, nature and society, so it includes our own body and our place in society. It is a totality of material objects, phenomena, and their interrelations. In the materialist view, the external world begins with the existence of a natural physical world of which we are a part. This is fundamental to a realist philosophy, which can be described as the doctrine that holds that the external world really exists, quite apart from our conceptions of it. In other words, all knowledge must necessarily be knowledge of something, and that something does not depend on our perception. On the other hand, in the idealist view, that something may be created by a spiritual being or a mind. This is known as objective idealism. If the something is a product of our consciousness, this is called subjective idealism. The external world is both that of an individual person and that which exists outside human society in general. Significantly, the existence of an external world is often placed into doubt in the realm of philosophy. But in psychology and science, it is usually assumed as foundational. The question of if and how you can have knowledge of such a world is widely acknowledged as one of the oldest problems in philosophy. It is critical for all of those who want to change the world. If we don't have a handle on reality, especially the complex and constantly transforming world of political consciousness, then our efforts will fall flat. The term empiricism comes from the Greek word for experience and the word empiric, which refers to a physician whose skill derives from practical experience. The Greek philosopher Aristotle saw the mind as a tabula rasa, or blank slate. Perceptions from the outside world are inscribed on this tabula. In his essay concerning human understanding, the English philosopher John Locke also described the mind in this way. His essay is considered foundational in empirical thought. In the 18th century, Scottish Enlightenment philosopher David Hume and Anglo-Irish Bishop George Berkeley asserted that sense experience is the source of all knowledge. Bishop Berkeley said, "Esse est percipi," to be is to be perceived. Variations of this view continue to dominate, particularly in the Anglo-Saxon world, right down to the present day. Empiricism may stretch to asserting that anything that we cannot experience with our 5 senses cannot be understood or does not exist, as Bishop Berkeley maintained. It tends to reduce all knowledge to sense perception. Anything not perceptible through the senses is considered, even derided, as metaphysics, which means beyond the physical, and is therefore condemned as pure speculation. So, if everything outside direct perception is irrelevant, how did Albert Einstein come up with his theories, long before he was proved correct by observational evidence? It was only through abstract thought experiments that Einstein deduced his theories of relativity from 1905. This was years before the solar eclipse of 1919 provided the astronomical evidence which proved his theory right. In the political sphere, how can we prepare for revolution if we wait for the empirical evidence of it happening? Empiricism was a significant step in human thought, as it encouraged the study and examination of the world outside thought itself, and often challenged outlooks handed down by religious or state authorities. But empiricism also has limitations and potential defects. It may deny that there is any other form of knowledge, for example logical, abstract, mathematical knowledge, or it says that such knowledge is unimportant. Empiricism may thus encourage the study of the external world, and at the same time deny that it exists independently of our senses. It may in some cases beg the question of where sensations actually come from. It may limit knowledge to perception of the immediate, thereby missing the connection of the immediate with the processes that so often lie hidden deeper inside. The Encyclopaedia Britannica notes that Bishop Berkeley proposed that nothing exists except minds and spirits and their perceptions or ideas. A person experiences material things, but their existence is not independent of the perceiving mind. Material things are thus mere perceptions. The reality of the outside world is contingent on a knower. End of quote. This outlook is known as subjective idealism. In a more extreme form, it tends towards solipsism, which holds that I alone exist. It was once described as a mad piano playing its keys in an empty universe. Bertrand Russell remarked that he was cured of solipsism for life by receiving a letter from a woman saying, "I'm so happy you think there may be something in solipsism. I wish there were more of us." So why does this matter? If knowledge and the truth are equated with combinations of sensations, perception can be dangerously misleading. Such a view can stop us probing how images that surround us are connected with, or in some cases disconnected from the reality that gives rise to them in the first place. If we want to move beyond the present system, we must not only see what is in front of our eyes, but theorize and prepare for historically unprecedented social processes before they occur. Is perception the same as knowledge? Clearly not, as we can see from these images. At the same time, we can only relate to and begin to take in what exists through our senses, through perception, by being in the world. Perception is the process by which we organize and interpret our sensory impressions. Living perception is the one and only starting point, but it is not the end of the road, as we shall discuss later in the course. In general usage, perception has two different meanings. One, the ability to see, hear, or become aware of something through the senses. Two, the way in which something is regarded, understood, or interpreted. For example, the right-wing media creates the perception that the UK is flooded with immigrants and that they are responsible for the lack of housing. In our image-focused consumer marketing world, the two, perception and what is being perceived, are often merged. Abigail Thorne, the popular YouTube philosopher pundit, tells us, as if it's gospel truth, and I quote, "Mental stuff is the bottom layer of reality, subjective. Reality is grounded in the experience of the subject." This view of perception is quite widespread. Indeed, it is heavily promoted through sophisticated marketing techniques, because I'm with it. Thus, it is said, there's no reality apart from what we perceive as individuals. There is a technical, philosophical term for this outlook. It's called subjective idealism. It's obviously crucial to distinguish between images and reality. Our ability to do this is more important than ever today, in the era of fake news and alt-truth. This is especially so with rapid advances in digital technology. We've gone from Photoshop to deep fakes, which use real but manipulated videos, which deploy artificial intelligence to produce fabricated images and sounds. If we consider our perceptions to be identical with reality, then it becomes impossible to separate fake from real. The perception that Trump actually won the US election has become the reality for many of his followers. This perception has a purchase because it taps into widespread discontent with the present. Idealized images, for example of a person's face or body or lifestyle, as presented by influencers and media celebrities, drive dissatisfaction and even distress about how you look. Psychotherapist and social critic Susie Orbach, describes how this leads to mental destabilization. We are coached towards a dematerialized existence where almost everything we understand about living, eating, breathing, moving, feeling, relating, will occur in the realm of thought, not in the physical worldly body. An obsession with appearance often arises from insecurities, especially amongst young women and men. This, of course, swells the profits of commercially astute influencers, social media corporates, and industries from makeup and anti-aging projects to cosmetic surgery. In other words, believing something to be true is said to be the same as it being true. Going back to Abigail Thorne's view, it may then be claimed that individual identities can challenge the existing paradigm. She foregrounds and defends subjectivity. For her, objectivity equals male-centered imperial power. The mere notion that there could be a universal objective truth is simply a way of enforcing that power. Heady stuff, but totally wrong in my view. And finally, we'll look at contradiction, a key term for understanding where movement comes from. The ordinary view of contradiction is that there is an absolute distinction between something being or not being. Something is either black or white. The simple identity of formal logic, A equals A, an apple equals an apple, etc., is useful for many day-to-day activities. We spend a lot of time using it. For example, if you want to buy something online, you study customer reviews to compare one brand with another. Notions of identity and difference come into play. At one level, this is of course true. There is indeed an unbridgeable difference between being alive and dead, for example. But simple comparisons of like, unlike, can be inadequate for more complex situations when things are in rapid transition. In examining reality more closely, we discover that even life and death are processes. Opposites conjoin and interact in disturbing and transformative ways. The controversies over abortion, for example, are evidence of this. Exactly when does an individual life start? And people comas hover between life and death, giving rise to disturbing ethical dilemmas. Another example, the very concept of democracy is a contradiction. The word means people's power, and yet there is within every democracy a constant struggle against the possibility of dictatorship. The price of democracy is eternal vigilance. Exploring and trying to resolve or transform contradictions challenges our assumptions about how things are. If we are to grasp and act within a rapidly changing world, the concept of contradiction is vital. A contradiction expresses the internally conflicted nature of things in themselves. It can thus be a motivation to action. For example, doing something that was previously impossible, such as running a sub-2-hour marathon. Doing the impossible is a logical contradiction. If it's not possible, then I cannot do it. However, I may still aspire to do something that no one has ever done before. My determination and training finally allow me to break barriers. In this sense, contradictions are an expression of the essence of things, that the essence of life is movement and change. Things do exist mutually in opposition, or contradiction, to each other, and not only in thought. For example, a living person is composed of cells that are constantly dying and being born. A contradiction can invite a soul to reflection. It may encourage us to unravel why something does not appear to make sense or correspond to our previously held views. This quotation sums up contradiction as an indispensable concept expressing the inner source of all motion, change, and development. In this slide, you can see views of contradiction held by three very different thinkers: Alfred Lord Whitehead, the founder of process philosophy and teacher of Bertrand Russell, the Russian revolutionary leader Vladimir Lenin, and Audre Lorde, the American black lesbian mother warrior poet. Akala is an award-winning rapper and author of Natives, Race and Class in the Ruins of Empire. He explains how opposing forces gave rise to Britain's identity. Britain has long been a land of startling political paradoxes, cultivating a relatively impressive degree of freedom at home, while exporting and supporting terror, torture, and slavery abroad. It has produced all kinds of conflicting understandings of British history, identity, and place in the world, and of who is and who is not a citizen or an immigrant. Thus, contradictions can express deep truths about society. The sophisticated American literary critic Lionel Trilling once wrote that some artists and writers are meaningful and powerful because they contain contradiction. To quote from his Reality in America from 1950, they may express within themselves the very essence of the culture, and they do not submit to serve the ends of any one ideological group or tendency.